Okay, so thank you all so much for joining us for today's webinar presentation, which is entitled Resources and Strategies for Assessing the Needs of Your Organization. So here you can see the agenda for today's presentation. I won't go into too much detail. I'll give you a few seconds to read over it. But as you're considering what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about some of the different strategies and approaches that you and your organizational team can think about how to approach an organizational assessment as it relates to your financial empowerment work at your organization. So of course, I would be remiss if I didn't introduce the LCRC team. I've already talked a little bit about myself, so I won't bore you anymore. But of course, I'll start with Tiffany Marley, who is our project director, Jarl Crocker, who is the director of training and technical assistance here at the partnership. We're also pleased during this cycle to be joined by Jeannie Chaffin, who is the former OCS director, and she's a consultant on our work with us this year, particularly with our whole family approaches work. So we're very excited to have her join us this year. Next, we have Courtney Kohler, who is the Senior Associate of Training and Technical Assistance, Liza Porras, who I introduced to you all earlier, and last but certainly not least, we have Charity Frankowski, who's actually an AmeriCorps Vista volunteer working primarily with us on our rural impact work. As we do with all of our events, we like to do so by reciting the promise of community action together. We do this because it grounds us in our work, and despite our different titles and our different locations across the country, this is the thing that brings us all together in the work that we do each day. And it states that community action changes people's lives, embodies the spirit of hope, improves communities, and makes America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves and each other. So with that, if we can go ahead to the next slide. I'm going to turn things over into the wonderful hands of our presenter today. We're going to be joined by Carmen Shorter from Prosperity Now. So Carmen, I believe that you're on. You should be able to go ahead and get started.
Thank you so much, Hyacinth, for having me today. I'm really glad to be speaking with all of you about the resources and strategies your organization can use when identifying how to provide financial capability services to the clients that you're already serving. And as mentioned, my name is Carmen Shorter. I'm the Senior Manager for Learning with the Field Engagement Team at Prosperity Now. And we are also located in the Washington, D.C. area. We serve as an intermediary organization providing support for organizations much like your own. Our mission is to ensure that everyone in our country has a clear path to financial stability, wealth, and prosperity. And we do that work through partners across the country who are providing both financial capability services, who are doing research, who are doing advocacy to ensure that the people that we care about have what they need to thrive. And on today's conversation, we're going to touch on some of the work that we've done here, and some of you might be familiar with some of these topics, so really also interested in hearing from you as we go along. By the end of today's webinar, we hope that you'll understand the importance of financial capability across the lifespan, and understanding the process that an organization may follow to explore integrating financial capability into your existing programs, that you'll be familiar with the tools and methods of the planning guide that I'll describe a little bit later on today, and that you'll be familiar with other financial capability resources and tools that your organization can explore. So we want to start things off with the poll question, just to get a sense of who's in the room with us today. So I'm going to read these options out loud to you, and then we're going to give you a chance to share with us during the live poll. So how would you describe your experiences or your experience level providing financial capability services? Would you say that you're advanced with 2 or more years and that you understand the nuts and bolts of providing financial capability services? Would you say you're more intermediate with fewer than 2 years and you're looking to learn more? Or would you say that you're a beginner? Either you're just getting started or you're still exploring providing financial capability services. And if you would say something else, please share more with us in the chat box. So we're going to launch that poll for you now and give you all a chance to respond.
All right, looks like many of you are answering, so please continue to do so. And as Carmen said, if you have another answer, we would love to hear that in the chat. So please send that to us and make sure that you send to all panelists when you do so. So we'll give you all about, let's say, 30 more seconds to respond to the poll, and then we're going to display the results here on the screen for you all.
And we really appreciate everyone participating. This whole webinar matters the most when you have your voice in it.
All right, about 5 more seconds, and then we're going to close the poll, and it'll take about 10 to 15 seconds for the responses to display, and we'll share those. All right. So it's counting down about 15 seconds, and then we can see the answers here on the screen. So Carmen, you should be able to see the results. If not, I'm happy to read them.
All right, so let's take a look here, folks. We've got about a pretty even mix of people in the room with us today. A number of you identify as beginners, still learning, or maybe just getting started. And you're pretty well matched with the advanced group. And we've seen in the comments box, some of you have been working through financial capability services for over a decade, and some of you are actually providing technical assistance support for others. So it's great to know that there's a breadth of people in the room. And for those of you in the intermediate space, we're also really glad to have you with us. There's always so much to continue to learn. So we're going to continue, and hopefully during today's webinar, we'll touch on some things you might know and can share with us, or we'll learn some new things together. All right, so I'm going to move us on now. And let's start by defining the terms that we're using here today. What exactly do we mean when we say financial capability? So let me see if I can get us over. Hyacinth, I just want to make sure that attendees can actually see the slides again, or are we still showing our poll results?
Nope, go right ahead. We're moving along.
Perfect, thanks folks. All right, so financial capability. At Prosperity Now, we define this as the ability based on knowledge, skills, and access to manage financial resources more effectively. And we have recognized that financial capability is actually a critical step toward financial security. And keep in mind that as we're talking today, we want to remember that financial capability issues impact all of us, regardless of socioeconomic background, and that any one of us can lack one or more of the factors that we think of as necessary for financial capability. So let's take a closer look at some of those components. So we already said that it would be about knowledge, skills, and access, but here, let's get a little bit more granular. When we speak about knowledge, we're talking about the awareness people need to understand some of the terms, like how does credit work, to know where people might be able to go to have access to safe and affordable services, that people understand the terms of the agreements that they're reaching. We also want to talk about skills, which is the ability to actually navigate those tools, whether that is the ability, like some people who might remember in my age group, learning how to actually write a check, learning how to check your balance with a prepaid debit card, knowing how to go about securing finances for your first home. And that has to be paired with access to safe and affordable financial products, whether that is low or no fee checking, whether that is sort of a type of loan product that is not going to charge exorbitant fees, a prepaid card that does not accompany with it a fee every time you check your balance or every time you make a withdrawal. So access, as we talk here, folks, we really want to make sure that we're talking about this from a sort of racial wealth equity framework, that we're talking about this from an economic justice framework. And access is where sometimes practitioners begin to connect with the advocacy issues to ensure that the people who are learning and working with us through their financial issues can safely go about getting through the process and achieve the capacity to navigate and actually manage their resources effectively. So while we're talking about some of the more specific skill sets, just want to keep that in mind. So why is financial capability important? If we're not a primary, if financial services are not our primary domain, if we're doing healthcare or affordable home ownership, why does financial instability issues matter? What we know is that there's a level of stress that can impact people to the point where they don't have the mental bandwidth to navigate additional issues. And we also know that one area of financial instability can generate additional financial insecurity. So an individual who has low savings lacks the ability to recover from a major stress point, whether that is a major illness, whether someone is dealing with incarceration or having to pay fees or fines, whether they have any other financial emergency. Low savings can build into additional financial insecurity down the road. Someone carrying a high debt load, similar issues, they have to delay their ability to start generating some assets and having enough money to weather a rainy day. They can have an impact on their credit score, so trying to get out of that high debt cycle, they might continue to build a negative credit history that can impact their choices later down the road. And the same thing for low credit, that if a person has a low credit score or simply has never built a credit history, they'll have perhaps high interest rates for loans, they may have fewer products available, and for some people, the credit score can have an impact on their ability to access employment or housing. We also know that this impacts ability to focus on the work that they might be doing in our program. So an individual carrying a lot of financial stress is going to be impacting other areas of their life. Financial stress can have a direct impact on health, so that people who are more financially insecure may carry more stress, and with that, some of the coronary issues or other things that we've heard about that impacts the ability to focus at school, even access employment, a good education, has access issues for jobs, and can certainly impact people's ability to think ahead about their finances. We might see them repeating their tour through emergency support systems like the food pantry or rental assistance, because they just can't get ahead enough to think about ways to prevent that from repeating. So programs can take a look at how to help clients by looking at where financial services can actually benefit clients managing financial stress. So programs could be providing financial coaching or counseling. They might be looking at matched savings accounts to help people build toward their assets. They could also be thinking about financial education not as a standalone, but paired with your programming, so that when a person's ready to make a financial decision, they've got both the information they need and the relationships they need to address financial challenges in the future. So that leads us into integration. What do we mean when we're talking about financial capability services integration? We mean intentionally incorporating financial capability services into an existing program, an existing service that clients are already participating in. And it's important that we're talking about bringing those services to clients where they are, when they need them, in a way that's accessible and that is actually relevant to the priorities of our clients. So you'll see here that we're talking about workforce programs, workforce development, housing programs, whether that is someone providing housing or getting people ready to move from supportive housing back into the community, education, community health. There's so many different entry points where financial capability services can be integrated. And we'll talk about some of those in the future, but right now let's take a look at workforce development programs. One thing we've learned is that financial capability integration to existing programs can not only benefit a client's financial capability, their own ability to navigate their finances, it improves their ability to benefit from the services that they've come to you for in the first place. So research showed that, in New York City, showed that incorporating financial counseling services into a workforce development program showed that clients who received that integrated service package had higher average monthly incomes once they were employed. They had higher job placement rates, and that a year later, after they were actually placed in their position, they had a higher average salary than those clients who simply received their workforce development services. So there's benefits not only for a person's financial picture, it's also a benefit to their ability to navigate through and successfully graduate from the services that might be thought of as your primary set of services. So then what does integration look like? We talked about this workforce development agency where they provide access to credit counseling services to help increase a client's credit score. That then might make it easier for them to get placed in positions where they might still use credit history as an assessment about someone's ability to do their job. And we can talk in the, maybe in the Q&A about whether that's an accurate assessment, but certainly it is something that happens, and a program who recognizes that can integrate those services. An housing agency might provide budget management support and connect clients to an IDA, which is an adult match savings account, to help them save for a down payment and pairing that with a match. A food pantry could also offer financial counseling services because they recognize that people are coming to them for emergency support and they'd like to help them feel more stable. And then asset building coalitions. If you provide asset building as your primary set of work, if your whole workforce is around financial capability, pairing up with other organizations so that you're unifying that set of services and there's more of a one-stop center where clients can pick the services they need and get their needs met in one location. So characteristics of successful integration, some of you who are already doing this work can probably recognize this. What we found is that financial capability services integrated into your existing programs, they should address clients' identified financial issues. And in doing so, they can result in improved client outcomes. So it's really important that they are tailored to the people you need to serve and that the outcomes that you've identified are relevant for where the clients actually are. Financial capability services that are tailored to meet clients where they are in their financial lives really matters as well. If you're working with people who are coming to you for a food pantry, that might not be the first place to start with financial coaching, where people might need to be a little bit more stable. So making sure they're customized to where the client is as they see themselves and their own ability. Well-designed programs also make sure that clients have easy access to those financial capability services. Ideally, they're thinking about transportation issues, they're thinking about time issues and childcare, and other things can impact a person's ability to engage those services. It's not simply enough to have them available, but to make them super accessible in a way that the clients can make the most use. Services that are provided in a way that leverages existing staff expertise and capacity. What's really tempting sometimes to hear about the good work that financial coaching or another financial services approach can offer a client and want to incorporate that without first assessing, do we have the right people here? Do we have the right time available in their schedule? Who here has a strength that we can leverage? So really thinking about your staff capacity, interest, and the training that they might need to do well in their work. And also, a well-designed integration program coordinates financial capability and other services through their established delivery processes. And they ensure that there's consistent communication between service providers. And here we might be talking about perhaps working with an external organization that primarily focuses on financial capability and making sure you've got a very clear pathway to referral, or even internally, if you're talking about taking someone from your housing program over to your workforce development program, that you've got clear lines of communication and that the processes are transparent for all involved. So you can learn more about these. We'll talk more about some of these characteristics. I just want to lay that out there, that there is some forethought and some planning that's required, and the tool that we're going to focus on today will help you learn a little bit more about that. So some of you may have heard of this. Prosperity Now, working with the Office of, I'm going to get to it in a second. I always stumble over the name, so let me get to the slide where it shows it. We were working with the Office, the Administration for Children and Families at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. A lot of you all may have heard of them as the people who were coordinating the now ended IDA program. Over a number of years, we did a lot of work on the ground with practitioners just like you to learn more about what was working, where some of the challenging points were, and what were some steps, processes, and tools that could help programs more effectively integrate financial capability services programs. So the Building Financial Capability, a planning guide for integrated services, is a really dynamic, interactive toolkit that we're going to touch on during today's webinar. For the purposes of making it easy to talk about, I'll probably just call it the guide or the planning guide. So let's just take a quick look at what's in this guide. First of all, know that it's an interactive PDF, meaning that as you look at this document, it's not linear. You don't have to go from page 1 to page 2. The table of contents here outline sort of the body, the focus of the work. You'll see that we are laying out a number of sections here, and we'll talk about those in more detail. We'll be looking at envisioning your client's financial capability, building your planning team, doing the work you need to actually get into action, and some of the troubleshooting pieces that are involved. So without getting too deep into each section right now, you'll see that first, the heart of the work is right here in the 4 sections and the 13 tools that accompany those sections. You'll also see that you can navigate very easily between the sections simply by clicking on the right-hand menu bar. So if you click on section 1, for example, it will take you to the theory and the tools that are relevant for envisioning your client's financial capability. So you'll see the description and the individual tools listed. You also see what the objectives of that section are. All of it should be very clearly laid out for you just by clicking on the right navigation bar. All 13 tools, keep in mind, in this document are available for download so that it's very easy to work with them. And it comes in a couple of different formats. So as you look here at section 1, tool 1, you can download the tool as a blank Word document for your team to fill out. You can download it as a PDF, and you can also pull up an example, a completed section that shows you what this tool might look like if it had been completed by a planning team. And we'll talk more about that, because one great element to the guide is that you're not doing it in the dark. We'll have an example of an organization doing the work. Now, if you click at the home, at the bottom right corner, you'll see that home menu. It'll take you, as you might expect, right back to the table of contents. So easy to navigate. You should never feel lost in a section. You can always get right back to the main screen as you might think of it. In addition to the sections and the tools in each section, the guide contains resources at the very beginning. So you'll see that above at the top here. These sections will give you some context before you get started. A little bit more information about what the toolkit is, why financial capability integration matters, and a little bit more detail on how to use the guide. So there's a lot of great resources built in to help you understand what this is for and how to use it. And you'll also see at the bottom there's some resources at the end so that you can refer to these as you work through the guide, including a really, I think, robust appendix with all kinds of discussion points and explanations of terms. There's also a one-stop tool shop. You can think of that as the place to go to get all the blank forms that you need based on the tools you're trying to work through. So you can pick and choose through this document. I like to think of it as a choose-your-own-adventure or an interactive roadmap. It is not linear. Some of you have already indicated you've started doing the work. The guide is meant to help you get directly to the section that you need to strengthen the area that you want to focus on most. So in addition to the sections, you can collect information as you go along to help you make key decisions for each of what we think of the sections in this process. So the decision that you're working on in Tool 1, for example, in Section 1 rather, is about which financial capability services to provide to your clients. And you will get guidance on how to decide that. It's not simply what services sound good or even just about your internal capacity. There's a lot of information you'll want to gather so you can make this decision well. Here, the key components would be, how do my clients manage their finances currently? What financial outcomes actually matter most to my clients? And given what I now know about what my clients are doing to manage their finances now, which financial capability services will help them achieve the financial outcomes that matter most to them? So it's designed to help you follow through a logical process. Let's take a look at Section 2. In Section 2, the primary question that you're going to be answering is who will deliver the services, right? Once you've identified which services you want to offer to your clients, who's going to deliver those financial capability services to your targeted client? And some of the things you'll look at here is whether or not you have the capacity to deliver the services in-house. And you'll also do some community mapping so you can identify who in your community has a capacity to deliver those services to your clients. And what we like here is that it also allows you to assess whether those organizations do it effectively. Simply not enough to know that they exist. We're also providing you some ways to assess their effectiveness in doing the work as you consider them as a partner. In Section 3, the question that you're going to be answering is how will the financial capability service how will the services you identified be actually integrated into your existing services? So this is a way for organizations to take a much closer look at your current status. What do you have available? Where are your potential challenges? And what sort of support do you need to do this work? So to answer this question about how you'll integrate the services, we'll help you answer how do you currently interact with your clients? How does each financial capability service work? So how would it be integrated into your existing work through either referrals, partnerships, or in-house capability or capacity? And also, how will you know if this integration has been successful? So we're not leaving you to simply identify what to do or even how to do it. We also want to help you know whether you're doing what you meant to be doing and to tweak your approach as you go along. In the cross-cutting section here, this is more about tools and questions you can use at any point through the process, and you can also use it as a way to pitch to stakeholders that you want to help support you in this work. So to help you make that pitch, this section, the question you're answering is how can we convince key stakeholders to support this work? And you'll be answering the questions, what do you need to buy in, or who do you need to buy in to this effort? What do you need to know about them so you can make a more customized appeal, and how can you convince them to support you in this work? And as Hyacinth mentioned earlier, you care a lot about the people that you serve. You're doing a lot of work already. So this appeal to other folks to help you is an acknowledgement that we aren't islands, that we need to work together, and we're going to help you find a way through this toolkit to customize your approach to outside partners. So I told you that you're not left to do this work in the guide all by yourself. We'll be using the example of the HOPE Community Action Agency, which, hey, kind of a nice frame given who we're talking to today, right? So HOPE Community Action Agency is a fictional organization that is exploring offering financial capability services to its existing clients. And you'll see as you work through the guide, there'll be some points where we've highlighted how HOPE Community Action Agency is answering these questions. And when you look at the tools, the sample completed tools, it'll be how HOPE Community Action Agency answered those questions in the tools given the guidance. So here's an example of that. So here we're looking at tool 3 from section 1, which is the capstone theory of change. We'll talk about that more in detail. So you have an example to work with. If you're like me, it always helps to have something to reflect on, and we've designed a toolkit so that you can see how another organization might have answered it to give you guidance on how you can do this. So I talked a lot just now about what's in this guide. I want to pull back just a moment and just talk about what process the planning guide is actually walking you through. The whole point of this is to walk you through an integration process where you start by identifying your client's priority financial issues, and you identify the financial outcomes that will demonstrate improvements in your client's financial lives. You'll then select financial capability services that bridge that gap, that move clients from their current condition to get them closer to their desired financial position. You'll also work to decide who can provide those needed services and develop an internal implementation, referral, or partnership plan to connect clients to those services. And I want to pause to acknowledge that some organizations use more than simply one approach. So they might offer one type of service in-house, but they might do the other one by having an external partner come in a couple of times a week to offer an additional service. And throughout this process, we're talking about building stakeholder support, whether that is community members, people within your organization, and people who are perhaps professional partners in the work. So that's the overview of the process that the tool is walking you through. And we think that the tools inside the planning guide are well designed to do that. And we also want to give you an example of how that is worked out in section 1 of the planning guide. So here we're talking about envisioning your client's financial capability. So using the planning guide as an interactive roadmap, let's explore the planning process from just the first point of discovery. Sorry about that, I skipped a slide. So here's the layout basically of section 1. And it might seem a little counterintuitive. We start by assessing the client's financial capability through tool 1. That's the blue circle that you see there. Let's skip our training to go to the middle and go to the end. The financial capability outcomes is tool 2. And then we can focus on the bridge between the three of them, between those two by tool 3, which is the financial capability services. So again, we start by trying to assess our client's financial capability. We then identify the outcomes that would help those clients build financial capability. And then we look at, through tool 3, the services that can bridge their client's current financial state to their desired financial position. So tool 3 fills in that missing piece to get folks closer to where they want to be from where they currently are. So each section, I think I may have mentioned, culminates in a capstone tool. Here for section 1, where we're trying to think through your client's financial capability, all the work you're doing culminates in your theory of change. This is tool 3. I just want to give you a sense of what's here in the theory of change. You see it laid out again, like we said, from current financial capability to outcomes, with the services being provided there in the middle. And these sections really matter, including one that a lot of folks skip just by taking a quick glance at it. We're going to start with that one first. Just note that as you are looking at the tools in section 1, that these will lead to future sections, right? So as you're building through section 1, it feeds then the conversation you'll have amongst your planning team for section 2. Section 2 will help you decide who should do what, and section 3 will help you put together a comprehensive plan to get this work done. But here in section 1, you're going to do that essential work up front of determining which clients to focus on, with which services, and toward what ultimate ends, right? So where are you trying to go? You might need to make adjustments to the decisions that you make in section 1 as you continue to plan. Keep in mind that this is not set in stone, because you might learn more about who you're going to serve or which services to provide, and even which outcomes to focus on once you refine your plan in future sections. But starting in section 1 does give you a good sense of the work you're going to be doing, and it grounds it in a client perspective. Like so much of our work, it's really important that this is centered on who we mean to serve. And so the section that a lot of folks miss to start with is the target program here on tool 3. For us, it's really important to focus first on who are we trying to serve. And here in this context, the target program is the group of clients that are intended to receive the integrated financial capability services based on some shared characteristics. Now, this could be all the clients that you have in a particular program. It might be a subset of clients in a particular program. It could also be that you find that there's another group of clients that are not specific to any one of your existing program areas, but they have shared characteristics that unify their needs across your array of services. Now, again, I should have mentioned that these tools are completely customizable. If you download this tool 3 as a Word document, you can absolutely change the language in here. So some people might change this from target program to say maybe target group or target clients. We're using the language target program here just as a reminder that you're integrating into an existing program or service rather than creating a standalone service. So what do we mean by selecting a target program, and what are the steps required? What we want to emphasize is that you're identifying the client need, you're looking at the opportunity of this moment where you find yourselves beginning to plan, and you're also thinking about where you might need buy-in for the people that you're going to be asking to integrate some of these services. So client need, are financial issues a clear obstacle to clients' existing success in the program? Now, for some of you, it might be pretty plain. It's difficult, for example, to have folks focusing on workforce development if they're really challenged by transportation issues or childcare issues. It might be very difficult for you to help someone get through a housing preparation program when they need to keep tapping their savings for an emergency. So as you assess client needs, you're looking for an area in your service array where financial issues are already a clear obstacle in your client's ability to successfully move through your program. And then we'll take a look at the sort of opportunity that you find yourself in. Are financial topics already coming up when you're working with clients? Are you hearing people raise financial concerns when you're talking about family reunification efforts or things like that? Are you seeing that there are aspects of financial capability services that are already being incorporated? Perhaps you've got a case manager that's really good at budgeting, and a lot of clients are seeking that particular case manager out for that service. Are you seeing that there's an area in your workflow that just with a little bit of refinement, you could include financial capability to improve outcomes? And another example here could be healthcare navigators who are collecting income and other financial information from clients so they can figure out where they might guide them through the healthcare selection process. Well, here you've already got information about people's financial issues, so this could be a good place in your service array, an opportunity to add additional conversations around budgeting, for example. And there's also staff buy-in. As you're thinking about where to focus your attention, does this program staff support financial capability? And do they see that as a potential fit with their current program offerings? So you might have a program manager at a Head Start program where they're seeing parents struggling with financial issues. They might see the connection really clearly between financial capability and the outcomes that they're hoping for their parents and children that they serve. You want to make sure that the staff at that program understand the value of financial capability as part of the existing service array. So reasons to select it, we already touched on this really quickly. Clients are already assembled there. You already have a service. People are already using them, and they already know who you are, and you've got a client population ready to go. They have characteristics in common so that you can better design a service that could meet multiple people's needs and figure out an approach that could address all of their needs. And you're also looking at a concrete set of systems and resources that you can leverage. Ideally, this is a program that's already got some tenure, so you can build on what you have. Now let's move to tool one, understanding how your clients manage their financial lives currently. So you want to ask questions to help you understand how are your clients managing in these areas of financial capability. In the planning guide, we go into more detail about what these particular areas mean and what sort of services can address them. But thinking overall, you want to think about your client's money management, their income supports, whether they are actually earning income or they need it supplemented by public benefits, people's ability to manage credit and debt, how they use financial products and services. Are they able to make savings or investments, and do they have any experience with consumer protection? Are you finding that they are being exploited by telemarketers? Are you finding that they're often using payday lenders with really high fees? So keep in mind again that these are categories. We've organized them by topic just to help you focus. And in the planning guide, there's much more detail about where, what sort of services or needs can fall into these categories. But the planning tool does walk you through in tool one some prompting questions that help you get a better sense of their financial capability. And we also want to remind you that there are some additional questions to consider. Again, we at Prosperity Now do our work through a social justice and racial wealth equity lens, and we're always thinking about issues of access. So what are some of the underlying issues, structural issues, that are creating the financial challenges you're seeing amongst your clients? What's contributing to their current life condition or their financial choices and behaviors? It's tempting to look at just the person, but there might be community-wide or other structural issues to consider. And again, which of these challenges are identified at the access level, whether that is access to safe and affordable rental housing or products that are not exploitative in fines and fees. So we suggest some ways that you can go about collecting more information about your clients. It's probably tempting to say what you've observed by providing other services in your clients' lives, but we would recommend that you get more targeted to find out more specific information about their financial lives. So it could be distributing a survey to clients. You might hold focus groups or individual interviews to get a sense about specific financial issues. You might meet with financial capability providers in your community to find out more about the lives that are, the financial issues for community members like your clients through the lens of people already serving those needs. You can review national data sources. And here at Prosperity Now, we have an annual scorecard that takes a look at statewide and even does some more local and regional data about financial health indicators that you can use to learn more about the financial conditions facing your clients. So there are a lot of different ways to learn about your clients, and we know that this part right here could be time consuming because we're asking you to collect information you might not normally have about your clients. But we think that it's really worth it because most organizations just don't have a full picture of their clients' financial lives. And as you work on Tool 1, as you work on learning more about your client's financial capability, please don't worry about compiling every single possible piece of data. Just focus on getting the pieces of data that help you get a clear sense about which financial needs you might be able to address so that you can figure out which financial services might have the greatest impact for the clients that you're focusing on. So I want to pause here and ask you all, what do you see as the top financial challenge that your clients are facing? So as you think about this, here are some common categories that we've heard. We've heard that clients might be challenged by having no credit or negative credit history, that they might not have access to safe, affordable banking or checking accounts. They may lack savings or a personal safety net. They might be carrying high amounts of debt. And it could be that they're finding difficulty making their income last throughout the month. So I know I'm forcing this to just one decision, but what's the top financial challenge your clients are facing? And if I didn't catch it here, if there's something else, please share more with us in the chat box.
All right, thanks, Carmen. So many of you who are with us today have already started to enter in your responses, but if you haven't, please do so now. The poll should be showing up on the right-hand side of your screen. You have about 30 more seconds, and then we'll close the poll, and I will display the results like we did before.
And I'm already seeing some comments in the chat. I'm seeing that income is definitely a bit of a challenge for some of the clients you're seeing.
All right. And through the magic of technology, I can see that some of you have started and haven't quite finished. So make sure that you hit submit down at the bottom of your screen so we can see your answers. We appreciate your time. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and give it about 15 seconds, and then Carmen, it should display like it did for us earlier. So.
Great.
Okay, my computer is thinking about it. She's thinking, a few more seconds. Okay. Should be able to see them momentarily.
Excellent. Thank you, Hyacinth. So, yes, it certainly seems that by far the top challenge that you're seeing amongst your clients is difficulty making their income last through the month. More bills than money coming in, it sounds like. Lack of savings or a personal safety net. We're seeing about 14% of you saying that's the top issue. followed by no credit or negative credit, and it seems like the other and the high amounts of debt are sort of split evenly. So by far, majority of you are seeing that lack of income is an issue, and so knowing those kinds of things helps you better select the services that might make the most difference for your client. So we're going to move quickly then to Tool 2, looking at financial capability outcomes. If you have a clear sense of your client's current financial picture and it's not looking really bright, then it's really important to identify what would improved financial capability look like in the lives of your clients. And we want to just highlight for you that the long-term idea of an improved life condition, we know that can be really hard to build into an explicit outcome. So just want to show you here that as you're looking at knowledge, skills, and attitudes, right, the sort of KSAs, that's the short-term outcomes that you can address. Behavior change might be more medium-term, and then the ability to improve the life condition of the families that you're serving might be a long-term outcome. So we know here that it's going to take a little time finessing what these outcomes might be, but they're going to be directly linked to the financial issues you learned about in your client assessment. So here, for example, from the appendix, you'll see that there might be some suggested short-term, medium-term, and long-term outcomes depending on the financial capability area that you are focusing on. So if you're looking at credit and debt, for example, there could be some outcomes around knowledge acquisition. You could have some outcomes you want to identify around behavior, like paying bills on time. And so there are suggestions in the planning guide. So you do not have to know just off the top of your head. You have lots of guidance in the planning guide to help you pick outcomes that match the needs you've been able to identify. Keep in mind that Tool 2 helps you identify what success could look like. And that's for both your clients and also for your program design, right? So what would it look like if your clients had improved financial capability? What are some external factors that provide barriers that you might either be able to address or that might make it harder for you to address those issues? And again, we're talking about structural issues like policies. You might have some internal or external institutional practices that you might need to address. There could be some issues of accessibility for available resources and services. So there's some things that your organization can be building in that's for you to do. There might be things you're building in for your clients to do. And keep in mind, again, that outcomes do not equal outputs. We know this is tough sometimes if you guys have been working on any kind of theory of change. Just quickly, an output is the numbers, right, which you might be reporting monthly. The number of financial counseling sessions, the number of clients seen, those things, outputs, describe your program's activities. Outcomes are more of an indicator of change. For example, an improved credit score. We have a baseline piece of data and expanded data. So please keep in mind that the tool is going to help you get clear about outcomes. Outputs are later on in your game. So now let's take a look at Tool 3, which is about selecting financial capability services. And I have to say that we find a lot of folks are very tempted to start here. There's so many great services out there that we know can be useful for people. We often start the conversation, internally by what services we want to offer and how do we offer them. But I hope I've made the case that working through Section 1, it's really important to know the need and the change you're trying to affect so that when picking the services, you're making the most difference. So again, think about the problem you're trying to solve, the improved state that you're trying to achieve, the change you're trying to make, and then the services are thought of as a solution. So please make sure you're putting, the right order together so that when you get to this part around solutions, you'll know that it matters to the people you're trying to serve. So in the guide, they'll lay out not just the sections we talked about earlier, the financial capability services now are broken out by topic. So we found that there are 10 key financial capability services that tend to address clients' needs for low and moderate income folks to have an improved financial condition. You'll see that we organize those services by topic so that you can more easily identify services to meet the needs that you identified in Tool 1. And that can help you achieve the outcomes that you set in Tool 2. So for example, a lot of you mentioned that income is a bit of a challenge. So you want to probably focus your service array around either income supports, which might be free income tax preparation or securing access to public benefits, rather than savings and investments, because it just won't meet the needs or priorities of your clients. And again, like so many things, we know that there's variation, but we just want to highlight for you where the general framework lies. Again, referring back to the appendix, you see that there's all kinds of ways to learn about what these tools are. We're going to talk about what the service is, why the service is important, and ways that you might actually implement it. So here again, your theory of change now, you've just worked through all the things you need to build the theory of change. So I'm afraid this is supposed to have been animated. Now it just looks like a very challenging slide to look at instead, and I apologize. I'm going to go back to that. So here in your theory of change, tools 1, 2, and 3, tools 1 and 2 will help you fill out tool 3. So you've identified your target program, which includes who you're trying to serve and where you're trying to serve them. In tool 1, you'll have built out the finished capability needs of your clients. You'll have identified in tool 2 the outcomes or the improved condition you're trying to achieve, and now you've got these services that you want to implement. So you can learn more by exploring the tool. We'll make sure that we have access to, we'll get you the link to the PDF so you can explore these further. You will have the example of HOPE Community Action Agency as an example working throughout. And I just want to lay out for you that there are other pieces in the guide that show you the 3 approaches that most organizations use when integrating services. And those are to do it yourself, to do referral services, or to partner to provide services. So just quickly, do it yourself is what it sounds like. You're providing those services in-house with your existing staff and capability. You might be referring people through a structured referral program to get people to the services they need at an off-site location provided by another organization, or you might partner to bring your clients to a particular service area or have that practitioner organization come to you to provide services where your clients currently are. There are advantages and disadvantages to all of these approaches, and you can learn more about those as well in the planning guide. So just keep in mind, it doesn't have to be one. You can find programs that have found a continuum depending on the services they're offering, where some services are offered in-house and others are external. And I also want to reference for you that there are quick and easy training guide videos that you can watch. So you don't just have to listen to me or click through the PDF. There's a set of videos that walk through each section and help you understand more about it. So I'm going to turn things back over to Hyacinth to learn more about the tools available through Community Action Partnership.
Yes, thank you so much, Carmen, for walking us through the guide. I can't recommend that tool enough. It really kind of gives you all of the things that you need up front to really thoughtfully think through as an organization what exactly needs to go into your process to make sure that you have a really strong and integrated financial empowerment aspect to your work. So through the partnership, we have been so pleased to work with Prosperity Now over the last 4 years, kind of developing our tools in this space and specifically guiding some of your colleagues throughout our network through this work. And we have a couple of really valuable tools that I want to recommend to you all that I think will really help you all think through, regardless of what stage you're at. I know we have kind of a wide array of people with us, whether you're just starting out in this space or you've been doing it for years. We hopefully have some tools that offer you some additional perspective from our perspective as community action agencies in this work. So the first resource that I wanted to highlight for you all is entitled Learning with the Learning Community, Financial Empowerment. This was a webinar that we facilitated last year where actually 3 community action agencies that participated in our financial empowerment for families learning community group in the last cycle of the learning community, they actually shared their progress and lessons learned. They participated in a 20-month cohort walking through different aspects of financial empowerment and really kind of developing a solid agency plan for their work. and this is where they left off, and they talked about the lessons learned, their progress, and also how being a part of a learning community, working through their problems and having other agencies that were doing the same work, being able to talk to them kind of in real time as they were going through their challenges. They talked about how that was really helpful for them. So this is a webinar that we facilitated last year, and we actually have a corresponding case study where we talk about a little bit in a little bit more detail kind of the specific action steps that these three agencies kind of arrived at as they worked through their 20 months as a part of our group, and kind of a little bit of a epilogue, seeing where they are now, talking about their work. So I would definitely recommend this resource. And everything that I'm going to talk about is available on the Learning Communities Resource Center blog, and I'll show you in a bit how you can find all of that information. But those were some really cool resources that we worked through in coordination with Prosperity Now. These agencies got a really in-depth kind of deep touch approach as they worked through this process, partnering with Prosperity Now. So they were able to achieve some really interesting and innovative things in this space. Another resource that I would want to point you all to is our Critical Components in Financial Empowerment Annotated Guide. This is a really big, bad, kind of in-depth tool that walks you through a lot of specific aspects of financial empowerment and kind of guides you through some resources on various scales, whether it's curriculums, whether it's websites that are kind of databases where you can find a lot more information, or if it's interactive tools that you can use depending on the service population that you're working with in your program or service. You can kind of find it all here. We have the links laid out for you. It's a very in-depth tool, and we partnered with OACAA on this project, so it's a really in-depth tool, and I hope it will be useful for you all in your work. Another resource that we have here in our arsenal was last year we were very pleased to partner with CFPB as the umbrella organization for all community action agencies that wanted to participate in the Your Money, Your Goals curriculum. For those of you that haven't heard of it, Your Money, Your Goals is a really interactive, in-depth training curriculum that you can use to both train your staff and also use with clients to kind of walk them through some of those really complex aspects of financial empowerment and financial capability, like debt, how to build credit, how to think about how to organize your savings plan, things that can be really overwhelming. It kind of takes it and breaks it down into really bite-sized, really easy to manage and understand steps, and to help make sure that both clients and staff alike can find a common ground when they're discussing these topics, and they can learn and grow together. So we were really pleased to be a part of that cohort, and last year we actually facilitated a frontline staff training that we recorded and is available to you all on our YouTube channel and on the blog. And again, I'll show you how to access that. But if you're interested in learning more about this toolkit, you can kind of watch this webinar. It's a little bit of a longer webinar, but if you watch this, it was a two-part series. It'll give you everything that you need to actually go ahead and get started with using this curriculum with your clients and your staff. And of course, I also want to point you all to Community Action Academy, our Moodle site. Here is where you can find information and kind of updates on all of our groups, but particularly with attention given to the financial empowerment group. We try to share the resources that we come across on a regular basis. It's totally free to create an account, but you can find resources not just from this group, but across all of our groups that are available to everyone on that site. So go ahead and check it out. And of course, all the resources that I shared are available on the Learning Communities Resource Center blog, which is available at lcrcweb.com. If you go to that site and you go to our resources page and you click under Financial Empowerment, that's actually where you'll see everything that I shared with you today, all of those webinars, those toolkits. You can download or access them directly from there. And I would also strongly suggest, if you haven't already, that you go ahead and sign up to follow our blog, and that way you can receive live updates anytime we post a new resource or there's a new development kind of in our world of the LCRC. You can find out about it here, and you can do so if you visit the home page. You go over to the left-hand side of your screen. There's kind of like a little follow dialog. We have it circled here on the screen, and you can just click to subscribe, and you'll start getting updates from there. So I'll turn things back over to Carmen, but that's just kind of a sliver of the resources that we have developed here on the partnership to kind of help you think through what it means to have a more integrated financial empowerment approach at your organization. So Carmen, I'll turn it quickly back over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Hyacinth. It sounds like some really great tools available, and I do hope that folks make the most out of it. So I'm working on getting access to the slides again, but Hyacinth, if you could help me regain the ability, that'd be helpful. Thank you. All right, so Hyacinth already touched on this, but I really want to highlight again the amazing tools available through the CFPB. The Your Money, Your Goals toolkit is really a great resource for both staff development and also working directly with participants on their prioritized financial issues. So it's a training tool. It can enhance confidence for your staff so that they're more comfortable discussing finances with clients. It's never an easy thing, so it helps to get into some of what makes that challenging and open the road to conversation with clients around money. It also provides clear examples of how those communication techniques might work in practice. It's modular, meaning you can go into different sections and get the pieces that you need. It also has really easy, accessible language so that you understand it, you can talk about it both in your team and also with your clients. It's available both in English and in Spanish. You can find the tool, the toolkit and supplemental resources on the CFPB website. And I don't have an image up, but I also want to bring your attention to a newer resource that they developed to be a companion called Behind on Bills. Really excellent resource that came out about a year or so ago. There's training and supplemental materials available around that as well. So you can talk with clients who are currently challenged by bill payment. So a quick overview of what's in Your Money, Your Goals. There's introductory modules, right? So you understand what the toolkit's trying to do. You understand how to do some of that stuff from the organization's perspective about assessing where your clients and your staff find themselves, how to start a conversation based on what you've observed with the client's finances, some of the emotional, cultural issues that might show up in those conversations, and then a quick overview on how to use a toolkit. Inside, the content modules include setting goals with clients, helping clients save or manage income, paying bills, managing cash flow. So there's all kinds of great resources that you can get really granular based on the specific needs of your clients. And there are a number of videos available as well. So you could just go to YouTube and watch the video there. Check out the training that CAP has done. And we also want to let you know that there are resources here for people at Prosperity Now to dive a little deeper into some of the content areas that practitioners might want to focus on. At the Prosperity Now community sort of general level, you'll have access to updates and resources across the field. Through the networks, you can get more specific about adult match savings, which are now replacing IDAs, Affordable Homeownership Network, our Racial Wealth Equity Network, which is looking both at practice internally in our organizations and with clients, and also out in the world as policy and program advocates. The Financial Coaching Network, our Taxpayer Opportunity Network for folks who might be running a VITA program. CSAs, we are starting a new medical financial partnership, or the Health Wealth Connection Network, and we also have work around manufactured housing. So between our networks and our campaigns, you can learn more about the structural issues, the access issues around home ownership, consumer protection, safety net issues, and the tax code, which can either be a resource for wealth building or a stranglehold on low and moderate income folks trying to get ahead. There are advocacy tools available at our Advocacy Center, and we also want to let you all know that we'll be having our biannual conference later on this year in September, and we are offering an early bird discount coupled with a network membership discount. So if you're interested at all, take a look at the Prosperity Now website, take a look at and sign up for one or more of our networks, and also take a look at the Prosperity Summit, formerly called the Assets Learning Conference. It's a huge event. We think it's one of the, I guess I should say this more humbly, but we think it's one of the easiest ways to access other practitioners and advocates at the level where you're working to expand your networks across the field. So I want to thank you all for being on this webinar. Just a quick reminder to complete the survey at the end. Your feedback really does matter for us. and I look forward to talking with you more in the Q&A. So I'm going to hand things back over again to Hyacinth.
All right, Carmen, thank you so much for that very in-depth walkthrough of all the different resources and tools produced and available by Prosperity Now as our participants are kind of thinking about maybe where they need to get started as it relates to their financial empowerment approach. So thank you so much. And now we're going to pause for questions. We've been bugging you in the chat. So if you've had a minute to think about it, please take just a moment to send in some questions through the chat. I'll give you just a few seconds to send in your responses. So Carmen, as folks are kind of thinking effort to have organizations participate in that work. So would you mind talking a little bit about that?
I would love to talk more about it, Hyacinth. I just have to acknowledge that I had a moment where your voice dropped out and I missed a key piece of the question. Okay. Could you try that again for me?
No problem. I was saying as folks are kind of sending in their questions, I know that this month is Financial Capability Month and that you all are doing a lot of work in this space to get organizations to participate in the conversation. Can you tell the folks on the line a little bit more about how they can participate in your efforts this month?
Absolutely. So in addition to it being Financial Capability Month, which I think is a much improved name than Financial Literacy Month, which it had been historically, this is also the 50th anniversary of the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1968. So this is Fair Housing Month, where we are hearing across the field people making the connection between the more individual financial capability work people are doing and the necessary structural work that was being done at the federal level to ensure that people had access not only to housing across racial lines, but also to the financing and insurance and other things that make home ownership possible. So we've got a number of events that are scheduled. We would love for you guys to come join us, for CAP members to join us in our Twitter town hall, which is going to be this Thursday, where we're going to talk a little bit more about what the Fair Housing Act has meant and what the implications are for fair housing issues. And we know that there are some programs that are working on housing directly, and there's folks who are working on advocacy. So our Twitter town hall is going to be on this Thursday, tomorrow at 2 o'clock Eastern. And you would follow us on Twitter at Prosperity Now. And this format's designed for it to be more like call and response. We'll ask a couple of questions. We'd love to have your feedback about what you see on the ground, and we're following that with a webinar next week on the current state and the future of fair housing. We've got great practitioners on the ground in New Orleans and elsewhere to share more about what they're seeing, and it's also designed to be interactive so we can hear from you all what you're prioritizing. So you can learn more about these events, and basically any of the events that we have coming up. My role is at the organization at Prosperity Now is to coordinate most of our virtual events. You can explore our website at prosperitynow.org and take a look at our events page. Our upcoming events is accessible at simply prosperitynow.org/events. We're also sharing a newsletter later on this month to highlight activities that our other Prosperity members have done across the field. So we would love to have you with us.
That was great. Thank you so much, Carmen. And we'll definitely make sure to recap all of the resources and different engagement points that you just discussed in the follow-up email that we send out with the recording link for today's webinar in the slides. So thank you. We're definitely going to participate in those efforts, so we hope to see a lot of you online doing the same. Okay, so a question that came in. Can you provide a little bit more specific direction on what resources there might be to assess the effectiveness of current financial capability offerings at our agency? Are there any other specific tools in the guide that you mentioned or any external resources?
That is an excellent question, and in the painful having to chop things out to be timely, I wasn't able to include some of the resources we've just put together in the last year on evaluation and assessment. At Prosperity Now, we do have some assessment tools I'd love to share. I don't want to misspeak their actual titles, though. So either I can pull those up while we're talking and get those out in the chat box, or I definitely invite anyone to reach out to me by email, cshorter@prosperitynow.org. And we'll also be sharing materials after today's event, and I can include those tools there as well.
Right. Well, I know one of your tools that I was just looking at a couple of days ago for our financial empowerment group is the Measuring Financial Capability and Well-Being in Financial Coaching Programs toolkit that you all produced. I believe that was this year or last year. But that report kind of walks through, I want to say it's like 4 or 5 agencies kind of using this common like scoring method as they looked at the programs they were offering and kind of landing at how they were serving clients across these different dimensions. So I would really recommend that tool as a great place to start. If you're thinking about maybe what measurements to use to kind of assess your program before you think more in depth about how you want to change, or before you kind of tackle like a huge tool kind of like the guide. But that was a really great resource, and we're using that in our efforts currently as well. Okay. Oh, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
I was going to say that, right, we've got a number of briefs that came out of some of our more dedicated technical assistant cohort groups, and that's one of them. So I will pull these together, and our hope is that people can find, if not exactly what you're looking for, a point in the right direction for some of the other evaluation information that's out there. It's a great question, and I do want to help you all answer it, and that is a great tool to mention.
Great. Thanks, Carmen, and thank you for that question. Another question that came in, do you have any resource recommendations for working with specific populations, i.e. persons with a background in the criminal justice system, persons with disabilities, et cetera?
Another excellent question. So while at Prosperity Now we serve as TA providers, we have been working with organizations that have identified those particular subpopulations as their target program. So I'm running a blank at the top of my head which toolkit to send to you directly. I know that we had a few in our brief series around TA that focused on domestic violence, for example. I know that we had a cohort exploring reentry services. I'm not sure if their materials are out yet. So I'm going to take time before your webinar mailing goes out, Hyacinth, to pull some things together that might be more population specific. And I'll also do a quick scan of our community members and see if I can pull up some of their products as well.
Sure. And while you're doing that, I know some that we have come across on our end in the partnership with our previous work in this space and kind of some related spaces, kind of going back to CFPB. They actually have some specific companion guides that go along with the Your Money, Your Goals curriculum, and they talk about how to broach those like major topics, so like debt, credit, savings with people from different backgrounds. So they specifically have one for people that have a background in the criminal justice system. They have one for working with people with disabilities. They also have one working with the elderly, and another for working with Native populations. So those are some tools that people actually got to utilize in that cohort that I mentioned. We had some agencies that participated in the 2017 Your Money, Your Goals cohort, and we actually had one of our agencies in the Community Action Network use that Native population tool to work with the Somali population in their region, in their service area, and they actually use those tools and a couple of other things to talk to them about how to address like debt and savings in relation to their background due to their Muslim faith. So that was really interesting, and they were actually able to make some really significant headway in that space. So that was really cool, and I'll direct you to those toolkits, which you can find on the Learning Communities Resource Center blog. That was a great question. Thank you for that, and thank you, Carmen, for your response. Another question that's a good one, can you speak a little bit more about intersectionality and maybe recommend some more resources on how to best incorporate that focus into any financial capability work?
I love, capital L, love this question. So Intersectionality from the space that I work, and I can't say this is necessarily I don't think that Prosperity Now uses this language officially, but inside the work that we do and through the work of the Racial Equity Network and some of our other racial equity goals, we think of intersectionality as the place where certain conditions converge, whether that is race, gender, ability, maybe even your legal status as a citizen or not. There are places where these identities converge and actually have some sort of burden or cumulative effect, usually from having needs not being met or being invisible in processes. So some of the ways that we have seen this is not so much toolkits, although I can share at least one with you. It's more about framing tools, and when we're helping programs think through program design, the right questions to ask of yourselves, of your partners, and of the needs of your clients. At Prosperity Now, from our policy side, we have a blueprint to help organizations think through, coalitions think through racial equity in policy planning so that you're not reinforcing some of the inequities that show up in your policy work. And I would argue that those same questions could be asked of any of your program design. There are also some great tools that came from the Annie E. Casey Foundation that, again, help organizations look at racial equity frameworks that can be applied to your program design. Now, if it's more about your client, if it's more about your staff training, there are some resources out there. I have to dive a little deeper to get them to you specifically. But what we think is important is these are not really optional issues, and it's not something you only do once a client shows up. It's more that you're designing with the intersections in mind so that you're not missing people because you have a normative assumption about who's coming and what they're able to do. It's about internal inquiry, so you're building from that space at the start.
Thank you for that, Carmen. And I'll definitely say on behalf of the partnership, our views are kind of right in line. We don't think that you can have a conversation about poverty, particularly from a financial inclusion point of view, without talking about race and without talking about gender. So that is a primary focus in all of the different focus areas that we have across the learning community, and is kind of one of the spaces that we're really looking to take a leadership role for as our network, to provide you all with resources and information on how you can best serve your clients where they are from their backgrounds, because that is a very important point. Some resources that we have come across on our end from the partnership, I'll point to some more Prosperity Now resources because you guys are doing some really great work in this space, kind of looking at it across the board, looking at the data and what it's kind of showing us if things don't change, kind of the trajectory that we're on as a country. So I'll definitely point out the Ever-Growing Gap publication, and the subtitle is Without Change, African American and Latino Families Won't Match White Wealth for Centuries. That really kind of just lays it out in plain language, kind of what the income inequality looks like in our country as it relates to income and wealth inequality as it relates to people in our country based on just the color of your skin. Some other resources that I will point out, there's an ebook that's entitled Equity, Growth, and Community, What the Nation Can Learn from America's Metro Areas, where it kind of looks at some of our bigger cities in the country that are dealing with issues of kind of segregation and income inequality and wealth inequality and how that's impacted their progress overall. And a similar resource that I would point you to is called The Cost of Segregation, Lost Income, Lost Lives, and lost potential. And again, that kind of looks at some of our bigger metro areas across the country and regions where this is still a challenge and what it's costing people kind of as a whole as you look at the region in terms of their progress and their growth. So all of those resources you can find on the partnership's website, and I'll definitely make sure to connect with Carmen so that we can share some more resources with you all on this really critical point. So thank you for that question, and thank you, Carmen. So I want to be mindful of everyone's time, so I think I'm going to close questions, but if you have any more burning questions or desires, you can reach out to Carmen. Her email is provided here on the screen, and you can also reach out to myself or any of the other partnership staff. you'll see our contact information shortly. So I'm just going to go right ahead and just, I want to thank you, Carmen, once again for taking the time to walk us through these resources and sharing your expertise and knowledge with us today. So thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really appreciating great questions from all of you.
Thank you, Carmen. And she'll be back with us for some future presentations. So if you love the sound of her voice and everything that she talked about, you'll get to hear more from her later on this year, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So thank you again, Carmen, as we go forward. So you joined us today for our Webinar Wednesday event, but of course that's not where the train stops. We have many more webinars to come talking about an array of different topics that we focus on here in the learning community. And for whoever asked that question about intersectionality, a couple of webinars that we have upcoming that I really want to highlight for you tie in with our Health Intersections Open Learning Community group, and those are going to be taking place on April 25th, which is our next Webinar Wednesday, and also on May 23rd. And that's talking about cultural humility and looking at it from a health equity perspective. So kind of thinking about the social determinants of health and how that ties into your work as a human service organization. So I definitely recommend that. Also upcoming, we have on May 25th, Building Intergenerational Success, Measuring Whole Family Outcomes, and also an Introduction to Collective Impact. We're going to have industry leaders, FSG, kind of walking us through an introduction, as it says, to collective impact and how you can think about that as it relates to your work. As Carmen mentioned, please take a few moments just to complete this survey. We really do read your responses, and we do use those we do reflect on those, and we do use them to improve the offerings that we have to you all, not just through our Webinar Wednesday offerings, but across the learning community. So please take just a few moments to fill it out. It's about 5 questions. We really do appreciate your feedback, and we do use it to make all of our presentations and offerings, not just in the learning community, but across the partnership better and more tailored for your needs. And as I mentioned, here is the contact information for the Learning Communities Resource Center team. Of course, you see myself, Hyacinth McKinley, but you can reach out to any of us with any of your questions, comments, or concerns. We will be more than happy to kind of direct you to a resource or anything that you would need as it relates to training and technical assistance on the offerings of the partnership. And we already kind of did questions and comments, but I'll do one last shameless plug for our upcoming annual convention. Registration is now live for that event, and you can see here that early bird registration ends at the end of this month, so please go ahead and check that out. You can find access to that from the partnership's website. Also, once we share the slides, you can click here and you can find more information. And as you're ramping up for the event, you're thinking about it, please participate with us across social media using the hashtag CapCon18. So with that, I want to thank you all so much for your time and attention, and that will conclude today's webinar presentation. Once again, I want to thank Carmen Shorter from Prosperity Now, and thank all of you. Have a great day.